Okay, hello. You're welcome to this show. Today I have my friends here. As usual, I'm Francis, a student from the University of Chicago. In this video, we are going to explore why old people currently dominate American politics and discuss the need for young people to step up and take over. So join us as we delve into the conversation behind this phenomenon and why a shift in leadership is essential for the future of our country. It is time for the youth to take over and raise their voices to be heard to make political changes. So I have my friends here. So I'll first start from Max. Max, maybe you can introduce yourself as we start the conversation.
Yeah, hi, I'm Max Taylor. I'm from Maryland, Montgomery County area, just outside of Washington, D.C. I'm a rising third year student at the University of Chicago, and I'm currently majoring in political science and race, diaspora, and indigeneity.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, Kelvin, can you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Kevin. I'm currently a student at the University of Chicago as well. I'm from California. I do some stuff in student government, and I'm majoring in probably political science and economics, but we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, and we also have Robbie here. Maybe Robbie, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. I'm Robbie. I'm originally from South Florida, and I am a rising second year at the University of Chicago and majoring in public policy and economics.
Yeah. Thank you guys for being on this. I'm so glad, I'm so happy that you are here. So, as it is, old people have been dominating our political sphere, especially in America here. As you know, last week, you all heard what happened on the news. I think it's buzzing everywhere. And I believe there should be a new regime. So that's actually what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to use some data that we have from like Pew Research Center. Their survey reveals that nearly half of Americans believe that the ideal age of a president should be in their 50s. So if you look at that data, additionally, you can see that 24% prefers their president to be in their 60s, and only 17% favors leaders to be in their 40s, and only 3% think leaders should be in their 70s. That's actually very, very important. And 3% also said like presidents should be in their 30s, even though the minimum age for presidency is 35. So you can see from here, and the survey did not specifically mention President Joe Biden, who is actually 81 or 80. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you can. Is he 80 or 81?
He might be 82, but don't quote me on that.
Okay. And former President Trump is also 77 or 78. I don't know. So preferences vary by age. If you look at that data, 48% of adults under the age of 30 prefer president to be in their 30s or 40s, while only 6% of those over 50 agree. However, 41% of adults prefer 50 and older. You can see the data as compared to only 11% of younger adults. And then definitely, if you're talking about American politics, you also talk about partisanship, because people actually, we don't know what like Republicans or Democrats actually prefer. But if you look at the data provided by Pew Research Center, the partisan differences are minimal, with Democrats and Republicans largely agreeing on the ideal range. So you can see that Democrat and Democrat-leaning independents are slightly more inclined than Republicans So you can see the data from there. So now, if you go to the House of Representatives, it is becoming more younger and younger and younger. Whilst the Senate median age is rising, that is according to the Pew Research Center. So the median age of the House is 57.9. And that is down from previous Congress due to the influx of the younger people in politics now. And that is what we are actually fighting for. We want more people to delve into the political spheres. So first time members predominantly in their 40s or younger actually are coming into the House. And we actually love that. In contrast, the Senate median age has increased to 65.3, despite younger new senators. And this tells you that younger people actually don't involve themselves in the Senate. This is what I want us to talk about. So you can see that most of the 73 new House representatives are below the age of 57.9. And if you look at the data again, they have a median age of 46.3. And the freshman House Republicans are slightly older on average than the Democrats. This is so controversial. Overall, the median House age is 58.1, while the House of the Republicans is 57.4. In the Senate, the median age of the Democrats are and the Republicans are nearly the same. Generationally, baby boomers and the silent generation make up 54% of the Congress, while Gen Z, of which we are all part of this, Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X account for only 46%. So the House includes only a significant number of Gen X and millennials members, with the Frost being the first Gen Z member. I think you know Frost in the House. Millennials now represent only 12% of the House, and Gen X are 38%. Boomers are still the largest generational group in the House, but their share is declining. In the Senate, boomers dominate with 66 members, while the silent generation has decreased to 8 senators. The number of Gen X has slightly increased. So you can see from the data. So, guys, now this is the data from Pew Research Center. So this is what I want us to discuss about. So my first question, I would throw my first question to Kelvin. It is really, really critical to know the importance of Gen Zs or young Americans in politics, right? So, Calvin, the problem is now we don't see a lot of like young people in the sphere of politics, especially with Gen Zs. And the world is becoming more Gen Zs now. So, can you let us discuss the current lack of Gen Z representation in the political offices and the consequences of this gap in contemporary American politics? So why? What is the problem that we don't have more Gen Zs involving themselves in politics? Kelvin.
Well, I think with with any problem, when Gen Z people aren't adequately represented in politics, that also means that like certain interests that they have that might not necessarily be represented by like older people. Those interests might not be represented in politics themselves. And I mean, it's very notable, I want to say, to look at the reaction among many Gen Z people when Biden did drop out of the race, which was there was suddenly like an influx, and I'm sure all of you guys have seen as well, of just people making, jokes about Kamala, like in support of Kamala, like, her famous quote, you didn't just fall out of a coconut tree or something like that. But I just think, Gen Z people, when they're not represented in government right now, that means a lot of things that uh, a lot of their interests as well can't be represented properly. Um, and I hope that helps answer your question a little bit.
Yeah.
And feel free to follow up if anything as well.
Yeah. I know that. Robbie, what do you think about that? The current lack of Gen Zs in the political sphere.
Well, I think it depends how you look at it. Because if you look at, I mean, elected officials, of course, the numbers are not great. I mean, I don't know what we're quantifying as the start age of Gen Z, but I'm assuming you're in your 20s or late teens. So given that metric, we wouldn't be able to qualify quite yet to be in the Senate, and you would just barely be able to qualify to be in the House. However, uh, you know, us as a young generation still have to push to be involved as much as possible, especially in local politics and school boards, for example, and maybe some state houses, some city councils where there's not technically those arbitrary, if not, but like defined age limits. I also think if you look at what young people are doing from an organizing front, I think that is something that's important. I mean, if today young people are more exposed to the political world than they ever have been any generation has ever been because of social media, because of just the online age that we're living in today. And I think because of that, you've seen these movements, as Kevin was mentioning, with Kamala Harris. Like young people are now motivated to get behind her because they're seeing all these crazy TikToks about her, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's something as simple as that. Uh, and also, like a lot of these like young organizing campaigns have kind of started on social media. I know the one that March for Our Lives that kind of started in Florida. That's kind of what propelled Max Frost to the House. He became an uh, an organizer there. This was led by Dave Hogg, but these are all young people who witnessed and survived. They were originally survivors of the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, and they were able to rally together to fight for a cause that has seen uh, you know, meaningful change on the state level in Florida by raising the age to buy a gun to 21, red flag laws, and other uh, advancements, and also on the national level with the largest gun violence prevention bill that we've seen passed uh, since in the 90s, right? In the most recent Biden-Harris administration. So I think with regards to what young people can do now is even though there are limits of what they can be in elected office, maybe federal elected office, I would say just go get involved in local politics, right? And go get involved in organizing. There's a bunch of great organizing initiatives that can make meaningful change both on the state and local level and on the national level, as we've seen in this most recent administration.
yeah,
And
yeah.
sorry, wait, I will jump in really, really quickly, if you don't
All
mind,
right,
Francis, to
all
add
right.
on to something that Robbie said, which I think was great, which is local politics. And I didn't always think this, like I grew up reading about national politics. And so that was the first thing I was always interested in. But local politics are actually really, really interesting. And I would say more important, arguably, for your day-to-day life in national politics. And I'll bring up one quick example, which is the city I'm originally from, which is Santa Clara. We actually had our city council taken over by the 49ers, if you believe it or not. It was I'm not even joking. Like it was, so they built the 49ers stadium, not in San Francisco, but in Santa Clara. And so the city had like some monetary dispute with the 49ers. And the 49ers said basically went like, instead of like paying out like our fair share or whatever, we're going to buy off all the city council members. And so the next election cycle, they like spent a bunch of money getting their own candidates on the city council. And the second they got on the council, they dropped their lawsuit against the 49ers. And what's more important to me, though, is there's 7 people on the city council. There's 5 people that's called like the 49er 5. And basically, the 49er 5 voted 5-2 to basically cancel this fireworks show that I've been going to since I was a little kid permanently. And so I think, that's just one example of how these things do affect your life.
That, that's cool. I'm gonna switch to Max. Max, how do you think? What do you think about what we're discussing?
I think the overall lack of representation of Gen Z members in sort of like our upper levels of government is probably down to just like as we've seen in these past couple of years, just the overall like diminishing of trust within our institutional systems, especially amongst our young cohort of Americans. I think, especially since the rise of Donald Trump and sort of everything that we saw with that. But even before that, really going back to like post 9/11, where we see like the Iraq War and some of the controversy around that, where people think that a president pretty much lied in order to go to war with another country over oil. I think that there's just an overall like lack of inherent trust in our systems. And because of that, it's leading people to be it's making people less inclined to actually want to get involved because they don't see the overall purpose of it. So I think that that's sort of bleeding down to our generation to the point where we have many members in Gen Z and many and millennials and younger generations who are sort of disenchanted with the American political system, which is leading them to not get involved, which is why we still see, unfortunately, we have 80-year-old men running for president still, and we have all these old people controlling the Congress and Senate because I believe that people are just fed up with the American system overall, and it's leading them to not want to get as involved with it and offer their talents in order to help us out, especially in this time where we really need some fresh, young and new voices.
Yeah. That's actually good. But I definitely wanna go back to Robbie. Robbie, what do you think are some of the consequences or some of the challenges faced by young people in getting themselves in politics? Because you know that people who actually take the decision for us are not us. Like, so older people are the one now taking decisions for we the young people. They are not going to live for the next 50 years. So we are actually going to face the brunt of the future. So what do you think are some of the consequences that is preventing young people from getting into politics?
Well, I think first off, I think the older generation, as I think previous older generations have acted, is they're pretty stubborn to give up power and to listen to the younger generation. And it might just be because they think they just don't know better, and that might be a relatively valid reason. I mean, the older generations have longer experience, right? Whether being a leader or in government. So they, from their perspective, they may be stubborn, saying, okay, I know better than someone who's been in politics for 5 years, so therefore I should remain in power. And I think that was a lot of what President Biden's message was, is that he's more experienced than anyone in the country to lead the country. He's been in politics for 54 years. But the fact of the matter is he's gotten to a point where he's just out of touch with the younger generation. It might not be a policy thing, but he wasn't appealing at all. He looked old and out of touch on stage, on the debate stage, and on various other campaign appearances. So I just think, I mean, going back to the point, that's a barrier, right? Is that older people tend to be very stubborn to give up power because they think they know better. And I think President Biden, what he did was very noble, that he did actually give up power after being pressed to. But also, I think uh, there are avenues for young people, and I just think, it's general career advice that people hear all the time, which is don't wait for your turn, just go out and get it. There are ways. Uh there's 20-year-olds being elected to the city legislator. If you run a very proficient campaign, like that is possible. Maxwell Frost is not a wealthy person. He was living out of his office very early on in his the when he was first elected to Congress. I mean, he had a grassroots effort to be elected to Congress. Because you know, young people just tend not have as much money because they don't have as much experience, so they didn't have as much they've earned throughout their lifetime. So I think there's a financial barrier there, of course. I mean, student debt is still a thing, as much as President Biden is trying to eliminate that. But it is possible. We've seen it with Maxwell Frost. We've seen it with young organizers around the country. I just think there's going to be that natural barrier, and it's really going to come down to how bad do we want it, and how bad do young people want it. And if they want it more than the older generation, I think we're going to see good things coming in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Kelvin, what do you think? Is like the impact of like older politicians holding power and taking decisions for younger people? What impact does it have on the young people if we keep on allowing, like we don't involve ourselves and then allowing like old folks to take a decision for us? They don't actually like understand what we want, but they keep on taking decisions for us. So what do you think is going to be the impact if these things keep on happening?
I'll be completely honest. I'm not nowhere near as politically knowledgeable as Robbie is. He was just listing out examples left and right when I was listening to him.
Yeah,
Um, like great job. Like you really did a good job. I'm trying to think. And I know there's definitely been cases I've read about. Like I guarantee you there are. But I unfortunately can't think of an example off the top of my head.
yeah,
And I will get back to you if I can think of one because I know I've read about a lot of them before.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I'm
yeah.
just
That's
I,
fine.
I'm just not on top of my game today. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Maybe let me go to Max. Maybe Max can help us with those kind of impact if young people keep on taking decisions for us.
I think we've seen like a little bit of the impact of having these older people involved with politics. Just if you even I'm thinking if you look at something like Project 2025 and some of the Supreme Court decisions that we've been seeing these past couple of years, where the conservative body, the conservative sector of our country is really trying to like roll back a lot of the big policy movements around stuff like civil rights, women's rights, gay marriage, stuff like that. We've seen the striking down of affirmative action. I think that's mainly down to the fact that we have a lot of older people involved in our political system who are holding on to power, who don't really want to see America go into the next generation, the next era of its maturation process. They kind of want us to stay where we are, if not go backwards to when it was when the baby boomer generation was coming up. So I think that that's sort of a huge impact that we've seen in our political system by not having these like fresh and young voices getting involved.
Yeah.
So, okay, I did actually think of one thing I read about
Yeah,
previously. Sorry for the delay, but I forgot the exact statistic. I'm looking it up on Google right now, but I remember reading about how like America spends way more on caring for the elderly as on like students and children. The statistic I'm seeing right now on Google is about 2.4 times more. I feel like this was from 2009. I feel like I read a more recent thing that was higher. But I mean, regardless, you know, America is spending more on caring for the elderly than caring for children and, getting children through school, which I think it would be, in my opinion, as children, a child, kind of relatively, I think it would be better to invest more in, children early on so they can get the education they need so they can be successful later on in life. And so they can grow up to be productive, well functioning adults. And if you're spending most of that money on the elderly instead of children, I don't know if that would necessarily help the vast majority of the country, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Let me go back to Robbie. Robbie, what do you think are some of the potential benefits if we allow more people, more young people to step into leadership roles in the country?
I mean, I think we would see obvious benefits with regards to policy change. If you look at, some issues that young people are maybe the most passionate about and something that affects their lives the most, you would look at the climate crisis. I mean, that's just something that, frankly, older people don't have as much stake in as we do, because we are going to be on this planet for another 60 or 70 years, and we are going to have to experience uh, the negative effects of climate change that the older generation has imposed on us through investing in oil, through investing in not investing in clean energy, right? So I think, seeing policy change on that level, I mean, the United States under the Biden-Harris administration has done a very good job on pivoting to a greener economy, but I think more can be done, especially on the state level. I mean, Republicans and older people still tend to hang on to their uh, ideals that oil drill baby drill is the way to go, and that is just there's overwhelming scientific evidence that proves that is not the case, and that we do need to pivot to a green economy. We have to do it quickly. I think so we're going to see big progress on that front if we do elect more young people, if that's what people want to see. And also, like, we've grown up in an age with more school shootings and more mass shootings in the history of our country, right? And I think that is, as I mentioned, Maxwell Frost got elected to Congress on the coattails of uh, his organizing career, where he organized against gun violence uh, and promoted the legislation in Florida that was passed to ban assault weapons for people under the age of 21 and impose red flag laws. I mean, these are the policies of the younger generation. And I think, obviously, if they are elected and in more positions of power, we will see that policy change happen. There'll be more votes for it. I think another thing, obviously, just I think that our generation has dealt with is student debt. I mean, young people, college is more expensive than ever before, and if young people are going to college, they don't have means or the scholarship that have gotten them through college, and they've taken out loans. I mean, it has been, many people have struggled with having their 20s and being able to buy a house and affordability. There's affordability crisis in the United States. Housing has been more expensive than ever before. I mean, that is another issue, I think, that young people would fight for as well. And I think these are important issues for our country. I don't think this is going to hurt anyone. This is what the younger generation wants. And I think it's a change we'll see in the coming years when young people and our Gen Z specifically starts getting elected to higher offices.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maxwell, Max, can you expand on that?
Yeah, I pretty much gonna echo a lot of what Robbie said. Yeah, I think we would see a lot of you know, there's all obviously like the generational gap in what young people and older people care about. So stuff like obviously like the climate crisis. I think we are probably a lot more concerned now about civil rights because civil rights is sort of it encompasses a lot more nowadays than it did probably back in even the 60s, because now you have to include trans rights and gay rights and probably even more so women's rights than previously spoken on. I think also, yes, the climate crisis, there's been a lot of investments made in recent years on that, but I think if you were to get a body of young people within our Congress and our Senate, you'd probably see even greater emphasis on that. I think also too, another thing that our generation is probably even more so focused on even than older generations, the past generations before, is even some of the conflicts we see going on in the world right now. The conflict in, if I can just say the conflict in Gaza, I think, you know, in the past American generations, it's been so much like the default answer is just we side with Israel. We're America. Israel's our ally. That's just kind of how it is. That's the way it is. But I think with our generation, you've now kind of seen the a little bit of a shift where people are it's not so black and white. There's actually a little bit more gray. So I think that that would be another issue to concern ourselves with too. So I think there with the generational gap and just the overall difference in the issues that we value, you probably see some issues take more priority should there be a younger cohort enter the upper levels of power within our political system.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Kevin, maybe I don't know if you can also add something to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going off of both what Robbie and Max said, one thing that I was just looking at was Gen Z is actually on track to become like the most educated generation out of
We are
all the
proud of that.
exactly. It's great. And with that love, like with that kind of like shift in education as well, I think that necessarily changes some of our worldview compared to like older people's worldview as well, going like what both Robbie and Max were talking about earlier. And one specific example off the top of my head that I could just raise is, the issue like Robbie's climate change, but the issue of just like science in general. And like, should we, believe in science basically? And I remember during COVID, I was reading quite a lot of conspiracy theories about the vaccine, and like, well, not I was personally reading it. I was seeing other people echo those conspiracy theories about vaccines and whatnot. I was just like thinking to myself, like, no, like that's not, that's not true. That's not true. And I think hopefully, with more education comes less conspiracy theories. Crossing my fingers.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think we are running out of time, so I'm just gonna ask these quick questions and then we call it a day. Robbie, I will come back to you to give us some reasons. What are some of the reasons why do you think the older generation has remained in power for so long?
Well, I think, I mean, kind of echoing previous points, a lot of it is just to do with the system and how, the advantage of incumbency in American politics is a real thing. Older people, as I mentioned, they want to stay on the power, right? They're stubborn. They believe that the younger generation doesn't know as much as they do. And then also the institutions that make up our government incentivize people to run for re-election and to stay into power. I mean, they're usually, if you are, for example, federally and you're running for re-election under the umbrella of a certain party and you didn't do some crazy thing like come out against the president or buck the party leader, like you're going to be supported by all the money and all the fellow elected officials in your party if you're going to run for re-election, unless there's a big uprising in the party after a particularly bad debate performance and continuing media stories that come out nonstop about you being in mental decline, that might push out older people. But generally, I just think, you know, the reason why older people have been able to maintain power are two reasons. It's their stubbornness and the institutions that support their stubbornness and allow them to stay into power.
Yeah, yeah. Max?
Yeah, sort of similar to that. I think in our system there's a lot of comfortability that voters get with a certain candidate. So you got to think like, a lot of people, for example, a lot of people always debate like how much effect does the president really have on the economy? Well, even if you argue that the president may not have like a huge impact on the economy, if it's time for an election and the economy's good, you better believe that people are not going to be looking to replace that president. And it's the same sort of thing with a lot of the different sectors of government where it's like if our country's doing pretty well, people aren't going to want a lot of like electoral change because a lot of electoral change comes with like with uproar and the business community gets impacted and the politics get impacted and just the overall social vibe of our country gets impacted. So there's a lot of hassle that comes along with you know with reelection and choosing a new candidate and replacing the old one. And I can just speak off of personally being in DC this summer. I've been doing an internship for a company here. It's basically like a lobbying internship, and I've been able to go to some events at the some congressional hearings and meet with congressmen and see senators. And I can just say this on a personal level, the job looks very, very comfortable. Like, they don't look like if I was them, I wouldn't want to give up my power. They get to be well locked with the business community. Everybody knows them and everybody treats them with respect. They come up and it's how are you doing, Congressman, whatever, how you doing, Senator, whatever. And they look like they have a very, very comfortable life. So I do not blame them for wanting to hold on to the power that they hold. So yeah, there's a lot of just the comfortability from the people in power and the comfortability of people who are voting for them.
Yeah. That's cool. Like maybe let me go to Kevin.
In all honesty, I don't have that much new stuff to contribute, but I do want to echo obviously what both Max and Robbie were talking about. I actually didn't. I've read some stuff about lobbying. I don't have any personal firsthand experience with about it. But what Max was talking about was genuinely really interesting. I think I read this article a while ago, and don't quote me on this because I don't know if what I'm saying is right, but it was like the second someone was elected to Congress, like they got like all these different like invitations from different, interests and whatever to parties and whatnot. Like, they're living the life. And, you know, they're one, having fun, two, earning money, and three, they have power, which is, the trifecta. What else could you want? And um, because of that, like as both Max and Robbie said, I understand why they're still in power. Um, like who wouldn't want that? But, yeah, I think that.
Yeah. And then okay, so thank you guys. But your final advice, what advice will you guys give to young people? Um, Especially this is an election year and we only have 4 months or so, 3 months, I don't know, for the election. What are some of the messages that you guys will give to young people out there? So I'll start obviously with Ravi.
Well, I guess I have three messages to start. Number one is vote. Number two is vote. Number three is vote. I mean, that is the way you can make a difference right now. And don't just vote blindly by checking the first name on every box in your ballot. But, if you're 18 and you're a citizen and you can vote, do the research. There are so many websites out there, Ballotpedia. There, I mean, you could just do your own research on the candidates, on all the ballot measures, on the local races, as we talked about, and you can play a huge role in our democracy. And if you want to be even better, get five friends that vote. Only, 3 or 4 in 10 of Gen Zers will probably end up voting, if that, right? So if you can bring 5 friends to go vote, as long as they're 18 and they're citizens of the United States, like that is gonna be how we start to make a difference in our country. If you see a young leader on the ballot who stands up for your values, go volunteer for them, go campaign for them, and then go vote for them and get people to vote for them. I mean, politics, as much as there's been big money that's influenced on the top level that has come in recent years, right? It is still a grassroots sport. It still comes from the people, local races, especially more than ever. You can make a difference. You can start to make a difference. There's just so many ways to get involved. First, I would say vote. If you're not registered to vote, go to vote.gov, sign up. It's very easy. It takes 5 minutes. Vote.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Kelvin, your final advice for young people out there.
Robbie stole mine, but since it's so important, I'm going to reemphasize it again, and that is genuinely to go vote. Voting is a privilege that not everyone around the globe has, and a lot of people actually don't have this privilege. And you're in the United States, you have the right to vote, and you should make the full use of that right. And if you're in California, actually the state sends you like this packet with like arguments for and against each of the ballot measures on the packet. So you actually don't even need to do that much outside research. Just like read through the packet, see which ballot measures you support, read both the argument for and against, make your own educated choice. And if you feel strongly about an issue, maybe go out, talk about it, like with a few of your friends or publicly, whatever you want. Campaign for it if again you feel strongly about a specific issue, and just it's a democracy. Make your voice heard.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Max?
Yeah. Well, first I'll echo what they said. Yes, everyone go out, register to vote, 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 vote. Definitely that's a key part of our system. So definitely exercise your right, get educated, and go vote. I think second, I would say to people of our generation, like get optimistic again about America and the American political system. I think in our generation, I don't like the amount of cynicism that I hear a lot about the American about America and our political institutions. And while it is important to acknowledge that our country is nowhere near perfect, there's a lot wrong. There's a lot that we're doing wrong as a society, and there's a lot that our politicians and our political system has gotten wrong and forgotten and neglected over these last couple of years. There's still promise. There's still like hope to really change things. And it comes from people getting involved and getting engaged politically. And I'm not saying everyone needs to be a politics expert of some sort, but just don't write off the US yet, and don't write off your ability to impact our system, even if you feel like you're not significant within this American system that we've built. Your voice is important. It's necessary, and especially in this time, it's needed. So I just would tell everyone to get their optimism up and use that to motivate them to get involved politically in our society, because we definitely need some new and fresh voices and ideas.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I love the fact that all of you said go out and vote. That's actually very important. And the Institute of Politics at U Chicago is actually preaching on voting. So it's very important for young people out there, especially if you're a U Chicago student and you are 18, of which you are, you should go out and vote. It's very important because your voice matters a lot. Your voice. Your opinion is very important as a young person. We are the future. The next 50 to 60 years is for us. So we need to make decisions that will be with us, decisions that is going to help our future, like climate change, as you're talking about, education, human rights. They are all important in our future. So we need to make sure we involve ourselves in politics. And you heard everything right from my friends here. And I'm so happy that they came and then brought their ideas, and together we can move our nation forward. And America will surely be great. Thank you very much for having time to watch this show. Bye bye.